First of all, welcome. This is the How to Partner with Philanthropy conversation. As you've all probably read in the summary, the question was there is $500 billion flowing from philanthropy in this country, and not a lot of it is going to sports. And so one of the questions, and youth sports, and one of the questions has been why and how do we change that? And specifically, how can we get philanthropy to partner with this space and with the nonprofits serving these kids? You're going to hear from an expert panel here on this issue, and I'll have them introduce themselves in 1 second. But just so that everyone can get to know each other, I want to ask the question, first of all, who is from a nonprofit here? Can you raise your hand? Not many of you. Who is from the public sector? Okay, a couple of public sector folks. Who is a coach? A lot. I love that. And who is a player? Okay, good. Who is an athlete? Now we're talking. There we go. We get it up a little bit. All right, well, thank you. Just wanted to make sure we got to know each other and the panel got to know you. So I'll start it off like this. I'm going to introduce the panel. I'll ask each one of you to say who you are, what organization you come from, and just as importantly, what's your connection to sport? And I'll start with Talib.
Good afternoon. My name is Talib Horne. I am the director of the Baltimore Civic site for Annie Casey Foundation. Annie Casey Foundation was started probably 76 years ago by the owner of UPS. He did not have any children, and so out of respect for his mother, Annie E. Casey, he created the Annie Casey Foundation. We have 2 hometowns. One is Atlanta, where UPS is founded. The other one is Baltimore. So we've been in Baltimore since 1994. I direct all of the investments that we do in Baltimore. What got me to sports is personally I played tennis and soccer. I played for high school and also at the collegiate level. Currently, what is keeping me in sports is my daughter. She started off as a gymnast, and now she plays lacrosse and just got a scholarship to University of Pennsylvania. So we'll be playing lacrosse for UPenn. But my whole weekend life, my entire life has been focused on her. But it's really given me appreciation for how sports can change people's lives.
Hello, I'm Cara James. I'm the president and CEO of Grantmakers and Health. We are what's called philanthropy support organization. So we work with over 200 foundations and corporate giving programs around the country to improve health for all through better philanthropy. We are about a 40-year-old organization that's based in DC, but as I said, we work across the country in a number of areas. I am coming to GIH also having spent 8 years in federal service at the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services at the Department of Health and Human Services, just down the street from here in Baltimore. And what brought me to sport, I also player. I used to play soccer and basketball in college. For those of you at the earlier panel, I got the ACL and the arthritis to kind of go with all of that. And I stay in it. I have 4 nephews, 2 of whom one graduated from Davidson, where he played football. The other one is currently at Monmouth. He plays football. The other 2 are much younger. They play soccer. My older brother and my father and I coached the oldest nephews in soccer when they were younger, and so it's still fun.
All right, good to see everybody here. My name's Luke Ragland. I'm with the Daniels Fund. We're a private foundation based in Denver, Colorado. A little bit about the Daniels Fund. We have 8 funding areas, so we do lots of different stuff from addiction and homelessness, K-12, but amateur sports and youth sports are part of our portfolio. We were created by a guy named Bill Daniels. Bill Daniels was a cable TV pioneer, but he was really, and importantly here, a sports fanatic. He was a Golden Gloves boxing champion 2 times in the state of New Mexico at one point in his life. But that passion for sports was something that he credited with his success and something that he carried with him the rest of his life. He owned an ABA team, the Utah Stars, at one point in time. He was a part owner of the LA Lakers. He supported a lot of sporting events during his lifetime. And when he passed away and created the foundation, this was one of the key areas he wanted us to work in. For me personally, and the 4 states are Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, and Wyoming. For me personally, I grew up in a super small town. I had like an idyllic sports experience. I got to play every sport. Little guys like me could even play basketball, believe it or not, in a little small town like that. But I always tell everybody, sports really shaped me probably more than anything. Or another way I always say it is, I learned more from wrestling, truly learned more from wrestling than law school. And so that's my point of view. I'm a sports fanatic just like Bill Daniels, and so super excited to be here.
Thanks so much, Luke. And I'm Kevin Loeb, Managing Director for Strategy, Learning, and Evaluation at the Harry and Jeannette Weinberg Foundation, a local foundation here. Just for perspective on us, we give across 5 major areas: health, housing, jobs, education, and aging. We give away about $150 million a year to direct services. And half our money goes to operating and program grants, and the other half goes to capital. We're a big local funder here, but we also fund in Northeast Pennsylvania, New York City, San Francisco Bay Area, Hawaii, and Israel. So here's how we're going to plan on this working. The goal here is for everyone to get some perspectives on the way philanthropy is thinking about the world right now and how it's thinking about youth sports, and those intersections between the areas that philanthropy typically focuses on, like health and workforce and other pieces, and how you can fit in. I think arguably we all see nonprofits, service providers, and philanthropy as hopefully a connected relationship. We've obviously struggled to figure out how to make that really flow over the past years, and are hoping we can provide you some insights into how that could work. We are also going to save some time at the end, maybe 15, 20 minutes plus, to get some Q&A. So I'll just ask you, as we go through, as you listen to people, get some questions primed. Folks are excited to answer. And we'll aim to keep our answers short and to the point as best we can. I'm going to start off with Cara James. You have a lot of experience in an area that philanthropy, I think the country, but certainly philanthropy is honed in on, and that's health equity. We heard a little bit about this morning, but can you expand on what we really mean by health equity, even though I think some folks have a sense, your experience at CMS there, and how philanthropy's thinking about it so folks can interact?
Yeah, so, okay, succinctly. All right, so health equity, definition we think about is the ability for everyone to attain their highest level of health, and that we're addressing those barriers structurally and else systemically to help people achieve that. So it doesn't mean giving everybody the same thing. It means giving people what they need in recognition of where they're coming from. So this is something that, as with the rest of the country, following the pandemic and the recognition of the myriad health disparities we have in our country and our health system, philanthropy really kind of doubled down. There were a lot of health funders already in that space, but really working towards addressing that. Creating new programs, increasing funding, supporting Black, Indigenous, and people of color-led organizations, and investing in programs and initiatives to address some of the larger disparities that we have. Access, housing, food, income, education, the list goes on, unfortunately. And looking as well at like rural communities. And so we're seeing that 4 years later, we actually just finished a survey on this, and we've been looking at how that has changed over time. For the most part, philanthropy is staying in this space, but we are seeing some retrenchment back to where we were, which is unfortunate. Because we have not achieved equity, we have not gotten to where we need to be, and a lot of the systemic barriers, it's not something we can 30, 60, 90-day our way out of. It's going to take time. And you mentioned at CMS, I directed the Office of Minority Health there, and also co-chaired the CMS Rural Health Council. So really looking at access, quality of care, how do we incentivize the reduction of disparities in our health system, and a myriad things that we are trying to do there. So bringing that to philanthropy, we look obviously at that connection between health and equity. And when I think about sport, the things that we think about: access. Who has access to sport? Are you in a neighborhood that has parks in your ability to even just go out and play? Driving here, I passed street signs that was no playing in the street. No throwing balls and things like that. That ability to actually access sport and be able to play. Not to mention, I think that we think about the, sort of unfortunately, professionalization of what we're doing to youth sports. The amount of money that people have to pay to be able to travel weekly to tournaments. When I played, we had tournaments on holidays. Now it's every weekend. And you're traveling multiple states. And so just that ability. And as the previous speaker said, insurance. If you don't have insurance or if you're on Medicaid, allowing your child to play a sport could be really costly because of out-of-pocket expenses, and that may be something that parents are not making the case for. So those are just some of the things that I think about from an equity in sport issue and that opportunity and what it means for eventual advancement to help reduce other disparities that we have in our society.
And I want to give everyone a chance to kind of comment on these questions. So Talib and Luke, if you want to make any comments on this issue too around health equity, feel free to chime in.
I would just say +1. I mean, you know, especially around the increased costs. You know, that's something that we see in our direct program investments. Things are getting harder and harder for people. So seeing it on the ground, and really interested to see where philanthropy is moving, and excited to talk more about that.
So it actually gets into the next question, I think, very well, and I think Cara touched on it. But something I'm not sure we've done well enough, and I'd ask, you know, Talib, let's start with you maybe. You know, there's an obvious connection of sport and health, right? The basic physical activity. But can you talk a little bit more about how, you know, the view of sport and long-term health, what you think it provides and how it sets us for sort of a better future?
Good question. I think for us, the foundation does do direct service, but our primary vehicle for change is systems change, coalition building, and so health has a part of it. One of the things that we really focus on is community safety, and use that as sort of a way of us to address health, particularly with in low-income communities for African-American males. And so one of the interesting initiatives we're looking at funding is with Joakim Noah, who used to play for the Chicago Bulls. He has a program called One City, where they are using basketball players as advocates in basketball leagues to go into NBA cities to really focus on the reduction of homicides, gangs. In Baltimore, hopefully, with Carmelo Anthony, will be one of the new initiatives that we fund. And so I think health can be very broad when it comes to us, and I think it's a way of us with community building. You might get on this a little bit, but also I think it's really a chance for youth voice as well. For us, we think people who are closest to the issue usually have the best solutions to the issue, and a lot of times that's young people. And so health equity and health outcomes is a way in which our foundation also helps nationally, but also locally in Baltimore.
A chance too for Luke. Do you want to touch on that, or Cara expound on that?
Yeah, I think one of the other things when we think about the connection between sport and health, a lot of it is in that well-being space and what sport offers for mental health and well-being. When we think about some of those protective factors that children need to be resilient, one of those is one of the things of a good self-esteem and self-impression, and I think sport can help provide that. We also, thinking about having one adult who really cares about you. Ideally, that's, a parent, but in some cases it may be a coach. And I think about one of my high school classmates who her mother passed away and her siblings all ended up in foster care. It was our high school softball coach who kind of took her in and sort of helped her to move to that next phase and helped her get a scholarship to play softball in college. And so a coach can be that person for sport. I think it also helps you to overcome. I mean, for all of us who raised our hands and said we played, who hasn't been down in a game, and behind, and that ability to kind of pull through and keep going, play through the whistle or whatever it is, that the buzzer, but to come back and to have that ability that helps with your mental resilience and well-being that we can build to instill in kids is one of the things I think for sport, and then health, and then obviously the connection of the activity, the exercise, the routine of that, like training your body and being able to do that can be really helpful.
That. And before we kind of keep going forward, we're talking about the youth, and thank Talib for touching on this. there's this big youth voice component. We heard it yesterday. We've heard a lot about it over time. How are we incorporating the voices of young people? Annie Casey Foundation is a leader in this space, a real leader in this space, especially in our hometown of Baltimore, and certainly in Atlanta, and understanding the power of that. Before we kind of keep going down Philanthropy's perspective, Philanthropy does have a perspective on youth voice and its role in sports. So Talib, do you mind going a little more into how Annie E. Casey looks at that and its importance? And then I'll ask the others to kind of chime in too on this and how they view it in their own giving.
Yeah, I think for all those who are actively involved, I think the question would be how do you incorporate youth voice in your design? I think it starts there in terms of do their opinions matter, and how are you designing the program to focus in on them. I think on the other end, we look at sort of measurements and outcomes. So not outputs, not how many games they played, how many games you won, but this question is anyone better off? What impact have you had on that child's life? And a lot of times we don't want to hear from you, we want to hear from them. And so to the extent that youth are involved from the beginning to the end, that's something that matters. That also is a way in which if sports giving is not sort of a core area of a foundation, that also could be a way in which it gives you an opportunity to come to a Casey Foundation, to look at a priority of ours, which is youth voice, and how can sports lead to that. And so I think incorporating youth voice in design, incorporating youth voice into sort of community building activities in a particular community could offer you a lot of different types of foundations who might not have sports giving as a primary tenet of their board. One quick example of that is we have funded a group, Living Classrooms, where you guys were at yesterday, the UA House, and how they're using sports to really work with public housing residents in that particular area. And so we gave money for them in terms of community building activities using sports as a tool, but the outcome of that was a healthier community. So I think it all starts with youth voice, and I think that is a strategic way for you to get connected to different foundations.
I just want to chime in on this.
One sort of quick anecdote from Denver. There's a really interesting program called My Spark Denver, where the city of Denver gives every middle school low-income kid in the city $1,500 to spend on whatever they want. Okay, and that's not just sports. That's any sort of after-school, out-of-school program. And I've been tracking that closely. Really interesting. Over 50% of the young people, when they actually have the ability to choose for themselves what they want to do, what they think is important in their lives, are choosing sports over any other activity they can spend those resources on. And I hope people in Denver and around the country are paying attention to that. When young people are given the tools and the resources to make a decision about what they want to do for their own personal development, they're choosing sports at a number way higher than anything else. Nothing against piano, but the kids want to play sports.
I played piano. To come here, actually, it's stressful coming here to the Peabody Conservatory for competitions. But the other thing I would add, you've heard about the model with Annie Casey. One of the other ones that we think about is how you're incorporating youth voice into the decision making. And so there are some foundations that are actually having a youth advisory council that is helping to make decisions about where those foundations are spending their dollars, and does it align with the youth priorities. So that's another way in which to incorporate youth voice into the programming and decision making. And that's something that also coming out of the pandemic and the focus on equity, that a lot of foundations are trying to get closer to community and to build stronger relationships with community, and in some cases different relationships, because as they have looked at where funding is going, it tends to go to the usual suspects of who you know, and also some of those processes around how do you actually get to submit, because there is, while there is a grants.gov, there isn't a grants.org. that you could just go and look at all of the grants that are out there and apply for those. And in some cases, some foundations, it's invite only. Others do have open calls. And so that's also some of the things that philanthropy is looking at from an equity standpoint of how can they make the grant making a little more equitable.
Start to transition a little bit now from sort of the fully high level to still high level, but start to talk about, get a sense of what philanthropy is thinking about more broadly, issues of society, and how sports, we're thinking sports may play a role. And so hopefully this provides nonprofits which is an insight as you sort of explain and talk about the programs that you run and the operations, how you can figure out ways to intersect with us. So I want to ask this question. I want to start with Luke this time because I know you know a bit about this, but how does the Daniels Fund think broadly about sports and its general ability to help solve and be part of the solution to broader societal issues?
Yeah, so we're unique, right, that we have sports as an explicit area in our funding areas. But I will say we've increased our sports funding to now our second largest funding area out of the 8. It was dead last, 8 of 8, 3 years ago. And part of that is because, we believe in taking Bill Daniels' mission and ensuring that's there. But we also are seeing that sports is able to address problems that we're seeing in our other funding areas that aren't being addressed otherwise. So things like, we talked about mental health, physical health, those are almost like a given. But things like the breakdown of communities, young people's willingness to take risks. Jonathan Haidt has written a lot about this. If you haven't followed his research on this, I think it's a must. Social skills post-COVID, a lot of young people struggling there. A lack of purpose and meaning that we're seeing manifest in a bunch of ways. Lack of agency. These are all things that are very difficult to solve. And a lot of times we go to schools immediately and hey, teacher, here's another thing that we're going to expect you to do. And I know you all know a lot of teachers in the room. They're maxed. And the idea that we're going to ask them to do one more thing, I think, is a mistake. And so thinking about sports as a tool to address these bigger problems is something we're really excited about. And it's not just from our sports area. We're seeing it manifest in a variety of ways, and it's the reason we've really ramped up our sports funding. Sports can't solve those problems alone, so we don't want to be utopian about it. We don't think sports can be the sole thing to fix those, but it is probably a piece of the puzzle, and it's something that people exist. They want to do voluntarily. They're excited about. Kids are having fun. I loved earlier in the panel this morning, somebody mentioned fun is maybe a metric we should be thinking about. Heck yeah. I think that's super important for young people. So yes, I think it can do a lot outside of just that mental and physical health, which are obvious things I think for us. I think there's a lot of these other issues that sports can address.
About 3 years ago, we created an initiative called Thrive by 25. And we committed that over half of our annual giving, we give out close to $126 million annually, will go to the ages 14 to 24. When you look at the data, a lot of dollars are going to younger folk, 14 to 24. A lot of times, we call them opportunity youth. That's really a demographic where investments are going. So we asked ourselves, what are the things that a young person would need to thrive by 25? And we said there are 5 things. One is permanent connections. You talked about that. 2 is education and credentialing. 3 is financial stability. 4 is leadership. But 5th is basic human needs. And within that is physical and mental health. So within those 5 areas, we see sports as a way in which we could integrate some strategies aligning it to sports. And so we have a lot of examples on that. But youth and young adults, 14 to 24, we're giving half of our annual giving focused on that particular demographic.
No, I think that is, just want to +1 that because we do see so much investment in younger ages and then we sort of drop off, but there's a lot of transition that's happening that can be traumatic in some cases for some students, kind of going from that high school to whatever is next for them. I think, you were asking about how philanthropy is in sort of that policy and getting into some of that. And we have seen much more recognition by philanthropy that I think that the things we're trying to do, if we want to improve access to care, we can't do that, but only so far if we're not touching policy. And so you're seeing more foundations who are getting into the policy space. We actually just put out our first policy agenda in our 40-plus year history last year. We are working at the other end of the spectrum currently in a particular space around reauthorization of the Older Americans Act to help provide older adults with the supports and services they need to thrive in older age, because that's one of the other things we hopefully learned from the pandemic, that we don't actually have a system to do that. So that's a space where we're in. But you're seeing more foundations who are hiring policy folks, more foundations who are engaging in that policy space. We have foundations in the parks and recreation area looking at nutrition and food security. So a lot of the things that can help with that. And I think, the entree for a lot of probably health funders in many cases is that well-being space of what sport can do. And just want to plus one on the community engagement, because that's another space that we're trying to get more community engagement, rebuilding trust in communities, as we've seen a lack of trust in so many things, and sport can help be that connective tissue for a number of these issues.
That's excellent. And it's interesting because they're all different kind of funders. As Cara just indicated, there are a lot of foundations that have been getting into the policy space and the systems change space, right? They're constantly looking at systems. Whereas at Weinberg, for a long time, while we intersect with that space, we're a direct services funder. And we've been asking ourselves the question about how can we have an intersection there when we don't fund policy, but we want to point out opportunities in changes in policy or in programs and things that can work. And I'll give you an example. I'll call out a grantee that I was particularly impressed with over the past couple of years. Harlem Lacrosse, which is a Weinberg, they have a lot of funders, but Weinberg is one funder there, and we were never in this space. We hadn't funded them for years. And I met with their now chief program officer, but then time head of Baltimore. And, we were talking about it. I was a former lacrosse player in college, but, and so that was going to be a natural bias. But I said, but she got me when she said, Kevin, you're missing the point. The point is that the goal of a lacrosse player is not to play professional lacrosse, it's to go to college. And it was an interesting entree for us in a lot of ways, because that was true. Growing up, you played this certain kind of sport, like a number of other sports in the area, and you were looking for your end goal. And our goal as a foundation was, how do we get kids to show up for school, attend, and want to go to college or want to get a good post-secondary career option? And this was a convincing argument for us, and was able to take that back to our foundation. They said, yeah, we don't usually go in the direct services sports space, but their goal just isn't sport for sport for sport. And while that's some of it, the end goal intersected with us in that point. And it showed us a lot about high-quality, extracurricular, in-school programs that can really deliver the broader outcomes of health and really education success that we were looking for kids. And so that kind of partnership led us to now meet other people. And so I just want to show those kind of practical connections that we can make in broader societal issues that sport offers. We're going to have a few minutes. We're going to start Q&A. And so I do want to ask kind of, another key question. I want to start with Luke too and go through the group here, because I think this is a big question. We have medium size, large, and then definitely some small nonprofit, sports providers here. Luke, the question I've got for you, since you all have been doing this for a while at Daniels, is, what do you tell the smaller sports providers? And I want to add to that question because I want to give kind of a good shout out to Aspen Institute. Aspen's got this great link to measurement and evaluation in sports. And they've got this quote in there from some corporate philanthropist, which they wouldn't name, but if sport is so good, prove it, right? And I thought that was really powerful, because I think all of us know that we're athletes. I know it's worth it. I felt it. I experienced it. But philanthropy is a little different. Philanthropy is looking for outcomes and output sometimes, but they're looking for this, looking for the measurement and evaluation. And if nonprofit providers can't show us that, it's going to be tough. And so we have to figure out together what to do. So those are the two joint questions. What do you tell these smaller folks, and then how do you think about them proving program?
Yeah, I think first somebody needs to make the case for these things. I want to give a shout out to Aspen. I mean, I think they're really leading the country in making the case around why sports matters for, a broader set of issues that we've discussed. So just kudos to the team at Aspen for that. I would say just maybe a super practical thing. And I'm somebody who, I started a nonprofit, I ran a nonprofit, then I took over the grants program at the Daniels Fund. So I've sat on both sides. And I'll say, going from one side of that table to the other, the one thing that I feel like I would tell people to think about, and this is for small or large, pay way more attention to what the foundations say they're trying to fund. And, people get caught up, and I was guilty of this. And my program is life-changing. It's incredible. It's awesome. The answer to all those things can be yes, and it's not a fit. Right? So you have to think about what you're doing and how it fits. Start with the fit with the foundation, not with why your program is awesome. The other thing I would say is help people understand the problem. If people understand and believe strong enough that there's a problem, they're going to accept almost any solution to that. So this is a dangerous tool, but I'm telling you, it's a powerful one. Don't be afraid to make the case. I think a lot of smaller providers there are afraid to go and make the case for what they're doing because it's a small scale. Don't be afraid to do that. If it's a fit, people are likely going to want to fund it. I would say two things that we're doing at Daniels that I'm hoping other people will replicate. One, we just launched something called an Express Sports Assistance. And it's to address this exact problem where grants under like $10,000 and small grantees, people without professional staff, it was very difficult for a foundation like Daniels, where our average grant award's like $150,000, to deal with these. So we created a separate, smaller program with referral agency partners out in the community that can help us turn around money in 48 hours to a grant under $10,000 for sports. And this is something, we just launched it this year. We're already doing it. I was approving some of them on my phone during the panels earlier. It's really incredible, and it's a way that we've developed to get money very quickly to small sports providers. We're really excited about it. I hope other foundations will think about it. The second is Chance Sports. I see Vicky Pucci here in the audience. Hey, Vicky. Chance Sports is a way to provide direct scholarship assistance for competitive club-level athletes who can't otherwise afford to participate. It's difficult, again, for Daniels. I got a call from a good friend, James Coleman, who helped create Chance. He said, there's these two kids on our basketball team, a competitive team. They're great. They can't make it work anymore. They can't participate. Can Daniels give money to those two kids? And the answer was no. The IRS doesn't allow me to do that. And so we helped work with James to launch Chance Sports, which solves that problem. And it's an intermediary organization that then is supporting lots of smaller organizations around town through these direct scholarship to athletes. So I'll pause there. I got a lot more to say, but those are hopefully a few concrete tips.
A little Q&A.
I mean, I think that was perfect. I think the +1 on the find out what the foundation funds, because if it isn't a fit, it's just not going to work. And it's a lot of effort on your time that's not going to lead to anything. I think the other thing that is not to be underestimated is the role of relationships in philanthropy. You gotta know. Got to know the program officers, know what they're sort of interested, know what they're looking for. That's time intensive, but I just cannot underscore how important relationships are in philanthropy.
8 on that. I think you start with the relationship and not the funding request. So many times you put the funding request before the relationship. If you get the relationship, the funding usually comes with the relationship. The second thing I'll say is there's nothing wrong with starting small. Over-deliver and sort of under-promise, because a lot of times people just don't have the capacity. So you'll come to us and say you want to service 300 kids and you only have 2 staff. And so don't be afraid to be honest with the foundation in terms of what you can do. Second thing is volunteers. I think don't underestimate the power of volunteerism within your particular program in expanding the relationship. The last piece I'd say is partnership. If you are a small organization, there's nothing wrong with partnering with a larger organization. There's nothing wrong with partnering with recreational in parks or a recreational center or a school. And so partnership a lot of times is a way to gain trust. The foundation might be comfortable with a larger institution just because of internal controls and capacity, but at least that'll give you a bridge to a larger request. So I'd say partnerships, relationships, and be honest of what you can do.
Thanks to all 3 of you. Right now, we're gonna make a shift to the audience and make sure we get some questions here. I think Ruby in the back has a mic, right? And there's another mic on the other side. That's great. So can chase folks around and and hand it out. So if we can get our hands up high, I'm in a low chair, so I got to see you. We'll start right over here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was amazing. I'm excited. My name's Sheila Walker. I'm part of the Project Play Colorado team, and I'm a behavioral geneticist, how nurture and nature work together. And a couple of key things that I think are incredibly important. On the health piece, we know these early years are a sensitive period in development where habits are much stickier. So these positive experiences, fun for kids, these tend to be, habit forming. They stay active longer, especially multi-sport participation. We know that physical literacy is correlated with psychological resilience. So there are all these different pieces to it from a scientific standpoint that are incredibly compelling and important. And I'm so grateful that Tom and the team and Jen have been at this for such a long time, and it feels like it's really taking shape in a very different way now, and I'm excited for the road ahead. And on the Colorado Project Play, we are aiming to develop some metrics. We've got a postdoc at University of Denver who's going to be collecting data for a couple of years so that we can develop some metrics and have some apples-to-apples comparisons, and hopefully share these with other states.
Sounds perfect. Right over here.
Can I hold it? Okay. Sorry, that doesn't jive with my need for control. That's okay. I'm a developmental scientist. I'm at the Center for Violence Prevention Research. I study how to prevent violence against women and children. And I'm here because we have a project on teaching youth football coaches how to prevent violence against their athletes, mostly sexual violence. But I love that you guys sort of ended with that evaluation question, because that's a big question I have. I work with a lot of direct service providers as their research partner, and there is never a budget for evaluation in their direct service dollars. And really the funding streams are completely separate. So I can get research dollars, which are usually, I can't spend them on direct service, and they can get direct service dollars and can't spend them on research. And those are never really intertwined. So we piecemeal it. But I wondered if you guys could speak to what are your strategies that your organizations do to ensure that really rigorous evaluation is included and not like a $5,000 line item that gets you nowhere?
I'll say, as a more general thing, and this was from my time of being on the other side of the table, is I really encourage foundations to do more and more general operating grants and work together on the metrics that you want to see for that general operating grant, and then trust the grantee to achieve those outcomes. So general operating grants is the way that we solve that when grantees talk about evaluation and research and how they want to do it. We trust them. They know better than we do about the unique needs of their program and what sort of level of evaluation they need. I would say not everybody needs a randomized control trial, right? Some do, some don't. And so I think for Grantmakers, I hope that they'll consider more and more general or operating grants that allow flexibility with the dollars, especially when you can have a grant agreement that ensures the outcomes that you care about are there. Why not do more general op? I think it's a big miss in philanthropy.
I will just add that I think everything in philanthropy is on a continuum. So you are seeing, as a result of the pandemic, some foundations who are moving a little more in that space, who are dropping requirements for what they were asking for the application to make it easier. I would say, as a health policy researcher by training, philanthropy is a little light on evaluation, and it is what it is. I think that there is opportunity there, but yes, braiding funding is something that happens all the time, and trying to also partner, because the other thing is, for some of the smaller nonprofits that are doing the work, and even some of the bigger, they may not have the folks on staff to do the evaluation that is needed. So that's another place, but again, partnership so important in making that case for the sustainability.
Really fast. I think philanthropy has to do better on this. We looked at our indirect cost rate and the amount of dollars that we give for evaluation, and we upped it to 25% because of that. The other thing that we do is the majority of our grantees, we just ask for a narrative report and a financial report. We ask them if they would want to be sort of to get an evaluation, but before they get evaluation, we add capacity building dollars to get them evaluation ready. And so I think that's where the honesty with the foundation of what you can do and what you can't do and your capacity, I think to your question, it starts off with that honest conversation.
And like Luke said, make the case with us too, right? So our foundation was giving $300,000 or $400,000 away in the total evaluation space 4 years ago. We're investing almost $2 million a year now in different types of evaluations, right? From formative, to summative, to full-blown RCTs that are, ultra complex. Capacity building, it's growing in the field, like Cara said. But what's really helpful is when nonprofits come to us with folks like you, with the centers, to say, we want to partner. We think we can prove some of this, or we can bring even some solid qualitative data. Like, jump on us. We need that, and we need the pushback too, because we haven't always done that well. Who do we have next? Right over here.
Hello, Jose Chacon with Park City Community Foundation. We particularly work in an initiative that gets kids from K to 12 into sports and activities, particularly Latino youth. And one of my questions was just, what are some best practices or examples you all see to build more community building and trust? Because we do a lot of outreach within the Latino community, particularly us, but we want to really share that with our partners, because it has been kind of a little tricky. Some of the sports providers finding ways to just connect with families, connect with parents, and so forth. And there's been issues of communications or intention because of it. So I'm just curious if you've seen any good examples and so forth to build trust in the community.
I think one of the things in terms of the trust is long-term commitment. Too often we have, a grant or something that goes in and it's 1 year, 2 year, and out. And that actually erodes trust in the community. And so trying to encourage more funders to make long-term commitments to community to build that, because it takes time to build those relationships and to get to know and to have people who are going to be there so that they will feel comfortable opening up. That's part of also sort of building the trust. The other thing is also, having the kind of support network, because once you identify those issues that the families are having, are you able to help them with those? Because if they share that and it goes nowhere, they're not going to be as willing to share again. So helping to look and see what's there in the community to help address some of those resources. And again, that's partnering again with some of the others, because you may not be that trusted resource. And in some cases, philanthropy hasn't been the best partner. And so that is one of the others, and sort of looking at that history, what is the legacy there, and how do you sort of move past that? And then the last thing is meeting community where they are. So it may not be that you're inviting them to your building, but you're going out and meeting them where they are and in a space that is comfortable, and recognizing that they have expertise as equals in that space as well.
Thank you so much for the talk. It was amazing. So I wanted to ask you a question, because I'm working for a tech company that works in a credentialing system, particularly for young kids and coaching. We found that a lot of coaches sometimes do not run through like a background check, and it's very like the potentiality for offenders is really high. And so we're trying to offer our products for free, and it's not just on background check, but also to create a gamification experience, because we know kids are on their phone most of the time. So how can they also like not jump into that, vertigo of depression and anxiety by being on their phone, and how that can turn that into a motivating experience through sport. And the idea is issuing what we call a medallion every time they make an achievement. And on the other side, that's also for volunteers that participate that often go unseen. We found, though, that it's really difficult to, because we're a tech company, to get in conversation with community and partners, because feels like the technological part is very detached. And I wanted to hear your opinion on this.
Where my mind goes immediately is some of the apps that people use to organize youth sports. So like I coach, with the Rapids, some little tiny kids girls playing soccer, and it's a blast. And the app is really the centerpiece. And I know that there's several different apps that are utilized to organize youth sports programs. if I were you, I would start there. Trying to get each individual sports club or team on its own is very difficult. Looking at some of the infrastructure pieces probably makes more sense in terms of an entry point. That's my quick take.
Plus one.
Yeah, my name is Tim. I'm from Alabama. I work in public housing. Mr. Talib, the Thrive by 25, it kind of caught me. It kind of stuck out. A lot of athletes that grow up, their age range, 16 to 24, but the ball has to stop at some point in time. So once you gave me those 5 things that y'all focus on, I thought those were real important because I get a lot of athletes coming to me when the ball stops and like, what's next? So some of those 5 things, I missed 2 of them. But some of those 5 things, they kind of stuck out to me, and that's a age group that we're trying to focus on more because that's where it is. That's where the culture is. That's where everything changes at 16 to 24. And I love to learn more about your Thrive for 25, by 25.
Okay, so I'll give you the 5 again because I think you permanent connections, the education and credentialing, basic human needs. The 4th is youth leadership, and then youth, and then financial stability. Those are the 5. If you go on our website, we have a whole synopsis of that, or you can talk to me afterwards.
Time for maybe one more question, maybe 2 if there's a yes/no. But I will go. This hand was all the way up over here, and then we'll go there if this is short.
Sorry, not a yes/no. Mike Levin from Harlem Lacrosse. So thank you for the shout out and for the support. My question is, I often find I think Daniels is sort of unique in having a specific explicit focus on sports, and I find that we are frequently in between focus areas. For us, it's often education and health are the ones that we are in between, but it might be youth development also. And so I'm curious what the conversations are internally if you're making the case for a grantee when they do fall in between. Sometimes I wonder if it's sort of like, do we have the same rigor as a strict education program that would be funded? And we work hard to have that rigor, so we think that we fall in that space as well. Or is it just kind of like, well, we don't fund in between? And so I'm curious what the conversations are like internally when you're thinking about grantees that aren't squarely in one focus area but may hit a few.
I have a strong opinion on this one. We have 8 funding areas, everything from aging to early childhood education. And I'm not joking. I had somebody once say, we fit all 8 of your funding areas. And when somebody says that, I know it's not a fit immediately. And I'm serious. My strong advice, I encourage others if they disagree, because maybe it's different for different foundations. But for us, we're tight on those areas. I would say pick one that you think you have your best case to make. For us, a lot of times it muddies the water. We're looking for clarity. We're looking for fit. So my strong recommendation for somebody, and maybe Daniel's Fund is unique. We're like kind of tight, I would say, on these things. So know the foundation. But for ones like ours that are tight around their strategy, I would say definitely pick one. Others might disagree, though, so I'd love to hear other thoughts.
I think for us, we asked this question, who will be better off by this program? So part of that is track record, that you might come in and you're not really aligning with our strategy areas, but your track record is you really change young people's lives. And those are the organizations we want to invest in. Second is relationship. I'll be honest with you. If there's a relationship there, somebody in the room advocating, usually that helps out a lot. And that's why I say, really the relationship is going to be key, because you need advocates within the foundation.
And we're, just so you know, we're a mix. So we are 100% like the Daniels Fund and 100% different than the Daniels Fund. And we joke, to know one foundation is to know one. You could be siloed in our areas, and then we are absolutely starting a lot more to look for the intersectionality across sort of our different portfolios. And so health and education is a great example. We're looking at youth outcomes on the education side, likeliness to attend school, and also finding that some of these extracurricular programs are showing some mental health outcomes and happiness outcomes, which they really are, for kids saying, but I love doing this, and I'll show up. Well, that's attendance and a happy kid, which means a lot. So we do both.
The 30-second, I would just say the relationships are so important because that actually may be the entry of how you get invited to submit. So if if Talib is doing this area, that's the program that you're going to submit under, and it doesn't matter sort of what's happening over there because they don't know you. So that's another space where I think the relationships are really important, and leave it at that. Get the yes.
One more question. Is anyone right there, kind of in the middle? Had your hand up.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Sorry. Hey, my question is about public-private partnerships. Wondering how you guys have used philanthropy to get bond initiatives passed, or also using the grants that you have and pairing those with the bond for like a youth sports complex when you're trying to support parks programs or schools.
Yeah, I would say about 50% of our sports funding historically is capital projects, and there is often a public component to those. So it's just we look at those public supporters just like we would look at another foundation mix to make a capital project happen. For big projects, it's a lot of times necessary in some way, shape, or form to have a public-private partnership. We don't get involved in bond campaigns, but typically we'll be in the conversation as those are happening. And I will say for our board, a lot of times if local folks have skin in the game, local taxpayer districts has decided to put up 80% and they're looking for a challenge, that's a great, that incentivizes, I think, places like the Daniels Fund. So capital is a big part of our thing. Public stuff is almost always a part of the mix for the bigger projects. And we look at it as like having skin in the game.
I was just going to say, not so much in the sports space, but funders have been working. So Connecticut just passed the Baby Bond Initiative, and that is one where there was support for the funders doing that. Also in that matching, philanthropy can be that skin in the game if there is sort of a public-private match that needs to happen from the government to give the money down, that philanthropy can be some of that seed money, and in some cases does do that. Also supports that intermediary role if the state office of health insurance, whatever the case may be, can't quite get those dollars into community. Sometimes philanthropy steps in and serves as that intermediary to help get those dollars out in the case.
Last thing we do, I see two examples. I see Squash Wise over there, and I see Living Classrooms, both who recently just got grants for bonds for capital projects. Casey Foundation does not give capital, but we can advocate. And so a lot of times I think for foundations, you should talk to them about influence in terms of who's on their boards, who they know. And so a lot of times if a foundation does not do capital, a lot of times they can help you advocate through public markets.
Could I throw one more kind of like crazy idea out there? A lot of states are passing education savings accounts. So these are like mostly red states, so this is only applicable to some people. But I would say the sports space needs to pay close attention to those education savings accounts because this is putting the money directly under control of families, and families can choose where to spend it. And some of these are huge. Like the one in Arizona and Florida are gigantic. And sports, I don't think people have always thought about looking to that as a marketplace. I think it's a burgeoning marketplace. If I was a sports program in one of those ESA states, I would be paying super close attention. So that's an emerging one, but man, the amounts are huge. And as we saw from the MySpark thing in Denver, when families have the ability to choose how to spend resources, sports is part of the mix.
Weinberg is a huge capital funder. Half our giving every year, almost $75 million a year, is in capital funds. So we pay close attention to the types of money you're getting. I think the big question for us, we align with Luke in the sense that like we all look at it in the pot. Big item for us is sustainability of capital projects. If you're a big capital funder, these are long-term expenses. As you know, these permanent construction loans are 20 plus years. We got to know that, do you have an operating plan, et cetera, because worst thing for us is we make a big, giant investment, multi-million dollars, and it's shuttered, in 5 years, and people learn their lessons quickly there. So sustainability is a major component of that. We are only 2 minutes over, so hopefully Ruby is okay with that. We just wanted to thank you all. It was an honor to be here. I hope I speak on behalf of all you, and we'll see you around.